constructing their own cultural existence. This notion of history emphasizes not only the unceasing work of human creators, but also the unstable and hybrid character of their creation. In some versions, therefore, the determining character of world system and dependent structure is rejected. In others, what is repudiated are claims about authenticity, a different people, a unitary culture, tradition, and so on. Intelligent and influential people writing today are committed to this view of history making. Nevertheless, I remain skeptical. So I shall begin by rehearsing briefly what I find to be unconvincing about it, and at the same time sketch, through a process of resistance, alternative conceptions that orient the following chapters, even though most of these conceptions are not treated explicitly in them. Early in his recent Radcliffe Brown lecture, Marshall Sahlins declared his intention to join the anthropological chorus of protest against the idea that the global expansion of Western capitalism, or the world system so-called, has made the colonized and peripheral peoples the passive objects of their own history, and not its authors, and through tributary economic relations has turned their cultures likewise into adulterated goods. Sahlins proceeds to chide Eric Wolf for reducing the histories of non-European peoples to the history of global capitalism, despite Wolf's proclaimed wish to make non-Europeans the authors of their own history. The trouble with Wolf, Sahlins tells us, is his attachment to economistic Marxism. If only we had a more sophisticated Marxist understanding of production as a cultural process, we would at once see the falsity of assuming that the world expansion of capitalism brings all other cultural history to an end. Sahlins' histories of the British opening up of Imperial China, the European commercial penetration into Hawaii, and the quasi-feudal appropriation of European goods are intended to show how each encounter was guided by the cultural logic of the local people concerned. Sahlins' narratives are learned and persuasive, although a rigorous Marxist might want to point out that he draws his examples from the early phases of European expansion, which makes it easier to identify capitalism with exchange and consumption, rather than with the transformation of production and the reorganization of power relations. I have no wish to defend economistic Marxism here, or Wolf for that matter. What worries me is that the arguments espoused by this anthropological chorus, now joined by a chorus of historians, are not as clear as they might be. Thus, when Sahlins protests that local peoples are not passive objects of their own history, it should be evident that this is not equivalent to claiming that they are its authors. The sense of author is ambiguous as between the person who produces a narrative and the person who authorizes particular powers, including the right to produce certain kinds of narrative. The two are clearly connected, but there is an obvious sense in which the author of a biography is different from the author of the life that is its object, even if it is true that as an individual, as an active subject, that person is not entirely the author of his own life. Indeed, since everyone is in some degree or other an object for other people, as well as an object of others' narratives, no one is ever entirely the author of her life. People are never only active agents and subjects in their own history. The interesting question in each case is, in what degree and in what way are they agents or patients? Western capitalism, Sahlins observes, has loosed on the world enormous forces of production, coercion, and destruction. Yet precisely because they cannot be resisted, the relations and goods of the larger system also take on meaningful places in local schemes of things. If that is so, then local peoples have to be seen in a crucial sense as the passive objects of their own history and not its authors. Their authorship consists merely in adjusting consciously to those forces and giving that adjustment a meaning. But in that sense, they are no different from local peoples in Western societies from whom the relations and goods of the larger system also take on meaningful places in the local scheme of things. To take an extreme example, even the inmates of a concentration camp are able, in this sense, to live by their own cultural logic. But one may be forgiven.